I'm going to tell you what's been going on behind the scenes. In regard to the chamber music, I have always loved to play chamber music. You know, chamber music is just a bunch of musicians getting together. It's wonderful. Now, if people are good, they're too damn busy, or they want to get paid. Or if they're not good, it's not fun. So finally, one gal who came here to one of these shows came up to me as a cellist. And that's how this evolved. So she found a violinist. I hope she doesn't mind me telling this. Too bad she can't do anything about it. She's backstage. What happened was, I was so thrilled with the music. There I am in my living room, violin, the cello, the piano, sounding so wonderful. I'm in heaven, the whole thing. We're done after 2 hours, and the cellist is putting away her cello, and she says to the violinist, "You asshole!" I'm like, well, what happened? Turns out that he was saying things to her that she found very offensive. And he said, "Well, how do you think I feel? You just called me an asshole." He grabbed his axe and took off. My chamber music dream over. So I found out what had happened is that they had dated in the past. So maybe some of the comments that I would have let go like a duck. Hurt her feelings. So anyway, we searched around and we found another fellow. And he's not just another fellow. He's very talented. He's CalArts. His name is Michael Freed. And this is a lot of good things have been happening to me in the ego department. I've been busy, you know, taking care of my mama. I was a mama tender. So I'm getting now back into the music scene. So when Rolly, the cellist, told me she found another violinist, I didn't know he had a violinist name. So he comes to my house. He opens the door. "Hi, Richard." And he's a tall, good-looking fellow. I would have remembered that. And he played in my orchestra here for Hotline. So the world is getting smaller. And that's what we're trying to do. These concerts are to give an opportunity for singers, these wonderful singers here today, to get up and sing. There just is no place for them to do it. They have to leave. They have to go to people looking at LA or Opera Santa Barbara, but those are closed shops. Maybe they have to go to Chicago, to New York to get a chance. So this is what this whole thing is about. Louder, Richard! Getting good singers a chance to sing. Yeah. And also, keep an eye out because we are going to be doing 2 productions this year by Hook or Crook. We are probably one in the summer and maybe one in the fall. So watch out. So we're going to play a trio now. Cello, violin, and piano. We're going to just do the first movement as kind of an overture to the program. Then we're going to do the third movement as an overture to the second half of the program. This trio has a little subtitle, a little nickname. It's called The Ghost. And there's a little bit of conflicting story about why it is. But the most believable is, because there's evidence of this, Beethoven only wrote one opera, Fidelio, and he tortured himself about it because he's really not a vocal composer. But evidently there are notes, and he was thinking of doing an opera to Macbeth, and that never happened. So some of the music that he was going to use for the opera, he incorporated supposedly into this trio. So that's why they call it The Ghost, because there's that famous 3 little ghosts. But I hope they're ready. Are you guys ready? This is Whitney Raleigh. We're just going to go into this, if you don't mind. I have a little nephew who always says this is his favorite part. He loves that first piece that they play. You'll be seeing them again at the beginning of the second half of the program. You can see why it's so satisfying. Because when you're in a symphony orchestra, that's one world. If you're playing solo, that's another world. But when you have just this small amount of people, it's almost like you get a bonus for your work. You're doing your thing and you hear this wonderful camaraderie between them. You know, a lot of musicians turn out to be a bit antisocial because they need to spend so much time. And how long did that piece last? I don't know, a while. 5 minutes? Ha! Something, a long time. I let myself think for that one. For the amount of time that takes, it takes about, I don't know, a month of really actually working on it, and maybe 40 years. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's you're so exposed. You know, you can't hide in the section somewhere. Anyway, well, now we're going to get to some opera. You know, we are very close to Valentine's Day. I'm going to come down and make this easier to talk. So I like to do my Loretta Young impressions. Soon I'll mention Loretta Young and everyone in the audience. We're the last of a breed, I'll tell you. Because when I direct shows, especially with younger people at, say, junior college level or high school level, if you try and take a shortcut and say, give me a Judy Garland. Well, you do it maybe Bert Lahr. You can't do those anymore. Those people don't know. Maybe they studied movie history, but that's about it. Well, we're going to do two very romantic things today. We're going to do two giant love duets. The first one from Madame Butterfly. Madame Butterfly was the first opera that I saw. I've got to paint this picture. Little Dickie Weiss moves here from New Jersey. Mommy insists that he wear his little suit with the bow tie to school in Reseda. So you want to know why I'm emotionally scarred? So it was a tough situation, but there was a gal, my third grade teacher. They put me in second grade. They said, well, this imp has got to go to another grade. So they put me in third grade with Mrs. Holly. And she was my very first love affair. Not requited, but I was madly in love with this woman because she knew that I was special and knew how to treat me. It's different in schools now. So if any of you are cursed with having to be a teacher, and I say that because the pay is terrible and the responsibility is it's so difficult. This gal decided this guy needs help. I went to Mrs. Holly's house. I went swimming in her pool. She took me to concerts. All these things that you can't do anymore because you'll be thrown in jail for sexual molestation. But the first thing that she took me to was to see a singer by the name of Licia Albanese, who, if you know opera, was quite a legend. And she was long in the tooth, as we say, when I saw her. But I saw her do Madame Butterfly, and I was so entranced. Now, one thing that I can't bring you guys, I can bring you beautiful music, but I can't bring you the spectacle part of opera. Puccini was very careful about the librettos, the stories for his operas. He went to see a play called Madame Butterfly. He didn't understand a word of it. He spoke Italian. The play was in English. He didn't understand it at all. I want to make an opera out of that because it was so beautiful. And he did a great job. Here we have an American guy, about 1900. He's in the Navy, and he's bought the $25 whore package. You get the whole deal. You get a beautiful geisha girl, guaranteed to be clean. I'm sure she's a virgin. We do a whole wedding situation. You'll love it. So this is not spoken about clearly in the opera. But evidently, that's what happened. A nice-looking young fellow is talking to his buddy. He can't wait for her to arrive. And the arrival is so beautiful. And the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of what the sailor sings in the beginning. And you're going to hear a very familiar tune that opens this aria. You'll see. Oh my God, what's that doing in there? Well, I won't tell you what it is. But he tells his buddy right from the beginning, yeah, this is just a sham marriage. This is just a fun thing. When I get home to America, I'm going to get myself a real wife. So it's a lark for him, but it's a life-rending situation for him. So first, we're going to have a fellow by the name of John Matthews, who's a terrific singer, and he just looks like, in opera, you don't often have the luxury of having people look like the parts they're supposed to play. Because it's about the voice. So you may have a lovely, and this is no derogatory thing, it's okay to be 200 pounds. I'm that myself. Okay, but when you're supposed to be a 16-year-old girl dying of consumption, you have to have a willing suspension of disbelief. What I like about John, he looks like everybody's hero. He looks like Pinkerton. He looks like every young hero. Good-looking fellow and a beautiful voice, as you'll see. So we're going to do this. Takes place in the very first act. It's a beautiful Japanese garden. A couple of sailors are having this conversation, filling us in. There's this little Japanese guy called Goro running around. He's obviously kind of in the pimp business. But all of this is not ever explicitly mentioned. It's just a beautiful situation. And when the entrance of Butterfly is so exquisite, usually there's some kind of a staircase situation in the back. You have a beautiful Japanese garden, and the way Puccini has written it, that the melody goes, and then it goes a little bit higher, and a little bit higher, and a little bit higher, and each time you see a beautiful geisha, usually in a different color in a parasol, come into the garden, and at the very end, at the highest moment, we see Butterfly making her entrance. Now, this is operatic. I'm sure this didn't come with the $25 package. But you have to have the willing suspension of disbelief. So now, I'm going to introduce John Matthews. Now, doesn't he look like the kind of guy who would break your heart? No, actually, I'll tell you later. John is a married gent, and we actually had some problems getting this together for this, which I wanted to say. This is not in the form of an apology at all. I never apologize for my work. But we wanted to do this, and there was a little interruption. One day I got a text from John and said, "I'm in the hospital. She's having the baby right now." We couldn't rehearse that day, and needless to say, he has some other duties now. In the old days, the man's responsibility was to get the cigars and sit in the waiting room. Remember those days? That's not the case anymore. You got to watch the whole stinky thing. So things have changed, so John's been a bit busy. So usually we would like to stage this whole thing and tear your heart out that way, but today I'm going to ask you to just listen to the beautiful voices and listen to the beautiful Puccini music. We haven't done too much staging these things, so we haven't had time. So this whole thing is a progression. So just enjoy. He lives locally. We're trying, as you know, I'm trying to build up a situation where singers in this area, I found out since I've gotten involved now in the musical world of singing, practically every time you want to sing, it's an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, no matter where you are.
Depends on traffic.
Yeah. You never know. So we're trying to develop an identity. I think that our little area is ready for this. Okay, so what happens now in this opera, now we have this wonderful scene, the entrance of all of this beautiful garden. And you know, when I did my production of Butterfly, I had a big fight with myself because everybody likes to see that spectacle, including myself. Who would like to see 25 gorgeous kimonos and the beautiful flowers? But you know, it seems to me that it probably was a much more shabby affair. And in the third act, after he's left for 3 years, there's a wonderful, heart-rending line that she has. She asks a friend, says, "Can you tell me something? How often, at what time of year do the robins nest in America?" "Well, in the spring." "Well, when is the spring?" Because the robins have nested 3 times here. He said he would come back when the robins nest. And they've nested 3 times. Maybe it's a different situation in America. And when you know it's going to happen, you know, it just tears your heart out. So at the end, I have also seen, in the third act, after he's left her unsupported, where's the money come from? She's usually in this gorgeous place, and then the flowers. Well, in my production, it was really horrible. There were papers stacked up. There were no flowers in the yard for the garden. And she had the nerd in there. Anyway, sometimes you have to make these choices. So now we're going to have the love duet. What's happened is I said, this gentleman is quite anxious to get what he paid for. And the lady, of course, this is just wonderful for her. She's talking about the sun and the moon and the poetry of it and how much I enjoy. But there's also a little curse. At the party, just before this, her uncle, who was a religious man, cursed her. Said, "You're out of the family, we're never going to see you again." So this cost her her entire life. She has made a decision, and a couple of times in this duet, she stops. And you'll hear the music. It's the curse music, when she's reminded suddenly of how much she's paid. But each time that comes on, she turns to him and says, "You're worth it. You're a god. You're a god to me," she says. So now I'm going to introduce Grace Kim, who you've seen. She was in the Hoffman opera that we did, and she's also sung in these concerts before. And she's going to attempt the impossible role of Madame Butterfly. you just saw with the love duet, she had a one night of love and then he disappeared. 3 years she hasn't heard a word. And here she is expressing the hope that one day she's going to see his ship in the harbor. Everyone in the town has told her, forget it, go marry. There's a rich guy that wants to marry her. But she won't do it, she's holding out. And this is the apex of her hope. Her hope is just about to fail. And in a few minutes we do see a ship on the harbor. Beethoven passed away around when he was 54 years old. He had a problem with his father. His father wanted to make money like Mozart, so he had a little bit of an inferiority complex. But he also had a curse that he went blind, he went deaf, so that he could not hear his own music late at night. Who knows if maybe some of the adventurous ways that he went harmonically were because maybe he couldn't hear it. But in this is him at his most playful. He was a very serious fellow. He never found love. He was a horrible slob. I guess today he would be on TV as one of the mourners. He needed to go to a different apartment. He would go to an apartment and then it would get to be such a mess they would kick him out and he'd find another apartment. So there was a very sad quality about this man. And he looked very shabby. But one thing that he did for musicians, in his day when he first started out, musicians entered through the kitchen. And when they played, everyone talked and fanned themselves, etc. He was the first man to turn his back on the audience to conduct. And the first one to say, listen to me when I'm playing. So maybe that was because he couldn't hear himself very publicly. So he was a very important person musically. This, though, is himself at his most playful. This is the last movement of the same trio that we played the first movement of, the Ghost. But we're sparing you the Ghost part, and I think that's the middle part. was an angry man. Now we're going to go to the second love duet section. Tosca, you know, in the world that I live when I lived in the university, we're an awfully snobby bunch. And I understand where it comes from, because this kind of stuff is kind of the most developed, sophisticated thing that human beings do. It involves ballet, literature, theater, music, opera, novels, history. It's the creme de la creme. So a lot of times people are inhibited by it. And you should be. I mean, if I went to something I've never heard, if I don't know English, I'm going to be inhibited by Shakespeare. If I don't know music, I'm going to be inhibited by something complex. But I've got to tell you, it's really the elemental. When you love something like this, you're so excited about sharing it. And unfortunately, in opera, it just takes about a cool million to even think about doing a production that you see. So that's why we're trying to get some of these singers who, as you can see, they're perfectly ready to have professional careers. But they need to go away to do it, and they stay here because they have a family. John just had his third little baby. You know, they want to stay here, they're established here. So that's what we're doing. When you write your little checkies, that's what we're trying to do, is to provide something like this that's not such an anomaly. So people won't say, can you believe what I heard in lousy little Somis? It doesn't have to be lousy little Somis, lousy little Ventura, lousy little Camarillo. As a matter of fact, they're very right. I have a niece and a nephew who have, my great niece and great nephew. It's amazing the money they spend. She has dancing lessons, singing lessons, acting lessons. He wants to be a baseball player, so he's got a batting coach and a nutrition coach. I mean, the money's out there, folks, and they will support something like this, and you can be on the ground floor of that. Okay, Tosca. As I said, Puccini, he was a very romantic man. He had to fall in love with his heroine before he would take a pen to paper. Tosca, a lot of people say, the reason I started out with this snotty thing, a lot of people call Tosca a stinking little melodramatic potboiler. Because that's what it is. It's used every single trick in the book. You know, there's murder, there's incest, there's a little bit of rape here and there, political convictions, love as opposed to political. So, just let me tell you what happens in the first part here. We have an artist. An artist. You can read in Puccini here, but this guy's actually a painter. He's doing a painting in a church. He is in love with this wonderful gal. This is one of those rare things where the lead in the opera is an opera singer. Tosca is an opera diva. So you can do all kinds of diva things. She's a very diva kind of role. But when we first see him, he's happy. Cavaradossi is his name. The problem is, I don't know, I'm going to go on very dangerous territory. Are you ready? This is like going to, and this happened to me. A lady here who's in the audience invited me to an event. I didn't know what it was, but it was the Republican Women's Association. Now, I am a dyed-in-the-wool liberal. You find someone who needs something, I'm there. Women's rights, gay rights. So, what happened with this poor Cavaradossi is, Napoleon is creeping into all of Europe, and he's a Napoleon fan. But the fascists have hold of Italy in Rome, and that's where he is. So that's a little political underpinning that's going on in this opera. He winds up getting tortured and shot at the end. But meanwhile, no one knows this. They don't care about the plot. They're just enjoying this luscious Puccini music. So in the beginning, we're going to have a very short aria that he sings in the beginning. He's introducing himself. He's talking about Tosca, his wonderful love, how beautiful she is, and the power of love. And then, when Tosca has a very unusual entrance. It's a diva entrance because we hear her off stage first. She's yelling, Mario! Mario! Oh my God, who's that? Now, because the door is locked. Why is the door locked to the church? She's a very jealous woman. And when she comes in, this will explain some of the duet that we're going to get to. She looks at the painting that her lover is doing, and that ain't her face. Whose face is that? He explains that it's some lady that he saw in the church. And you'll see at a certain point in the duet when we get there, that she's very happy with him, she forgives him, but just when she's about to leave, she says, change the eyes. She's a very powerful woman, and that makes it very powerful when she is placing, talk about relating to the Me Too movement. The guy there who's in charge of Rome has the hots for her. She's the diva. And he prompts says, okay, I got your boyfriend in there. I'm torturing him. You want to hear the screams? He opens the door. And we hear these horrible screams for her lover in the next room. He says, well, you know what to do, don't you, in order for that to stop? So she has to make that choice right in front of us and everybody. And that's when she sings her famous aria. But she decides to murder him instead. You have to read the book. First, I give a little credit to my new dear friend John, who I've known for 3 weeks. I'm having a wonderful time meeting all these people because there's wonderful singers here and they don't get a chance to sing. So when they hear we're doing this, here they are. He was supposed to just do the Pinkerton, just do the butterfly. And there was another fellow by the name of John Park who was going to be doing the Tosca that you're going to see. So I didn't want to throw it out. So I said, John, can I ask you a favor? Can you do Pinkerton and Cavaradossi? And then he flashed those big white teeth at me and said, sure! So this is why we don't have these two duets polished as much as we would like. I would have liked to have had them more memorized and then we would have done some staging. But because these people were not scheduled to sing these particular things, we're kind of, but you'll see it's worth it. It's worth it, isn't it? Worth it? Yeah. First we're going to have this little aria from the first act. Cavaradossi, the painter, is at his easel talking about the power of love. There it is.
I'm pretty sure I didn't make that face when I said sure. I do have my
Tosca enters. She's a little suspicious. She wants to know, she thought she heard him talking to somebody. Of course, he was just singing about her. So she's a little bit jealous. So that's why I say it's an interesting, you hear her off stage and you're waiting to hear her because whenever you hear a production of Tosca, you've gone to see the Tosca. No. But when she comes in, she really is, her music is not, the music is pretty in the orchestra, but she's just fetching and moaning. What's the matter with her? What's with the door? She just rushes in and she's very jealous of the beauty. So again, Eugene, who is the gal, her name is not Eugene, her name is Y-O-O-J-I-N. She's a Korean lady. It sounds like Eugene Wang. She has never sung a role. It's exactly for singers like this, who have beautiful voices like that, who she has not had an opportunity to sing a role. So this is an exciting thing for her. So now we're going to do the duet from Tosca. Eugene Wang. You'll hear it in a moment. It's got a big dramatic entrance. sing the aria where she is trapped. Her lover's in the next room being tortured. The man is right there, ready to go. And she sings to God. She's a very religious woman. She says, I don't know what I've done to deserve this, why I would be put in this position. And she makes her final plea to him, please don't make me do this. But the saliva is forming in the sides of his mouth. There's not going to be a positive answer to that question. Yes, she has not sung this role before. It's wonderful to no, she works full time, 50 hours a week, doing some damn thing or other. So the time that's necessary to do something like that, it's sometimes, and as I said, in order to do it, they have to usually travel an hour and a half somewhere. Someone's doing it. So anyway, now, as they say in the showbiz, now for something entirely different. This is considered grand opera. Now we're going to go into the world of operetta. We're going to have 3 beautiful numbers. I'm so happy to be working with this gal. This was a gal who I heard about. And then finally met her. And this has happened to me in the last few months that I've been doing this. It's happened over and over again. To make a long story short, I go to meet some grand personage, and I'm thinking of myself as, gee, I hope I'm sufficient. And then you meet this person, and you're instant best friends, and it's not a matter of snobbery, it's a matter of finding somebody who knows what you know and is happy to share it with you. It's so wonderful! So I met Monica at a little party. I won't go into the details, but some fellow was trying to get something together. So we got this whole group together. Monica is a no-nonsense dame. That's what I like about her. Everyone was kind of walking on eggshells, and she said, just a minute. And straightened out the whole situation. Got it all understood. So when I met her at that night. So today, we're going to have Monica and her beloved, James, are going to be doing 3 little things from the world of opera. The first one is Super Gypsy. All my life, I was told that I was a Russian Jew. Then I found out, actually, that I'm Hungarian. And the story with that is that all the Jew boats, that's what they used to call them, all the Jew boats left from Odessa. If you were in a situation when you wanted to get the hell out, and believe me, there was a lot of that, you got to Odessa and took off. So when you got to Ellis Island, you came off that boat from Russia. Russian! On your papers. And who knew? So I didn't find out until later in life that I'm Hungarian. There's a wonderful connection between Austria and Hungary. If you know your history, there used to be an Austro-Hungarian Empire. We tend to put Trumpy walls in between countries. Oh, that's Spanish. Oh, no, that's French. But you know they connect. Or you say, oh, that's Spanish, that's African. You know, they're only about 20 miles. So different influences influence each other. So the Austrians were very fond of the Hungarian influence. This is a perfect example of it. This is from something called the Grafin Moritza, and it's by getting the lesser known. We know Lehar, we know some of the other composers, but Kalman is not as well known, Emmerich Kalman. But he did write an awful lot of this. He was a journeyman. He knocked them out. But this is a particularly wonderful number and really suitable for Monica's voice. So here I'm going to introduce Monica Schober.
I'm from the big city. I'm a countess. And I have properties in the land, in the farmlands of Hungary. And I am escaping the big city because I'm being chased by one too many men. And I've made up a story that I'm engaged to this baron. And I've made up this name, and I've taken this name from one of the Strauss operettas. Turns out, there really is one of these guys, his name, and he's a pig farmer. So this is my entrance, this is my showing up, and when I hear the sound of gypsy violin, something goes off in me.
fun to play as you think it is. And now we're going to hear a very dynamic on Dances Herz. This is a song that one of those, it's a very special place in music history. No one ever hears the show, but everyone knows this number from them. It's called The Land of Smiles by Lehar. And this is one of those songs, a few of them were made popular by that wonderful three-tenor concert. So that now half the world that never knew it before now knows it from that. But it is a really magnificent, beautiful song. It's like the epitome of the Viennese operetta tenor singing his love, singing his guts. And then this is James. I don't know that. Of the Vienna Waltz. This is Franz Lehar, The Merry Widow. The Merry Widow has a problem that we all wish we had. She has more money than the goddamn government. But unfortunately, the government knows it. So they have had a little plan hatched for her. They've gotten a local yokel who's going to charm her and maybe marry her and then funnel some of that money where they feel it belongs. But this is a kind of a time-worn plot. Guess what? He really falls in love with her. But try and convince her of that. But this is the famous Merry Widow Waltz to finish off this program, which was all about love and all of its permutations. I think that love is a wonderful illusion, a wonderful ideal that we reach towards. Sometimes we get a little second of it. Sometimes we get 10 seconds of it. But something we pursue always. Sometimes we misinterpret it. We think we have it and we don't. And sometimes we have it and we don't realize it's there. So we've tried to give you some love in all different forms today, and hope that you take some of it out there into a very tough world.